on 30 seconds, Mark. Where's Mark? We can start now. It's okay. Yeah, it's on. Do you want to wait a bit? Or is it going okay now?
Look at this.
Chair, from what I can see, we've only got one speaker for item 1 present at the moment. I don't know if you want to hang on.
My head on.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I caught your head there, didn't I? Oh dear, I'm sorry.
No, we'll have to start the meeting, I think. If he's
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that then. I'm sorry.
Can I ask members to turn their mics off? Mark, what speaker is it? Melvin?
Well, Mr. John Gardner, who's the objector
well,
today.
I think he sent a written statement anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to start the meeting. Okay, then. Okay, we're going to start. Welcome, everybody. This meeting is being live streamed over YouTube, so welcome also to all who are tuning in. The agenda and papers for this meeting have been circulated in advance of this meeting and are available on the Council's website. The role of this meeting is to consider the planning applications that are going to be presented today, to debate them and hopefully determine them. By way of housekeeping, can I ask all who are in this meeting to keep your microphone on mute during the presentation and discussion, and indicate that you want to speak by using the raise your hand function, or just speak up if you're having problems with the raise your hand function. It's important that you speak and you have all the information you need. I will call on you to speak in turn. Can I remind you all that unless you switch your video off, you will be visible in the meeting display. Firstly, I'll ask the officers who will be presenting information to introduce themselves. If during the meeting any members of the committee wish to speak or ask a question, can I also ask you to introduce yourself at this point? I'm Bob Goldsworthy, Councillor Bob Goldsworthy, and I'm chairing this meeting today. Vice Chair?
I'm Councillor Michael Hood, Vice Chair.
Brendan? Brendan?
Sorry, Chair, I had my microphone muted. Apologies, everyone. Brendan McNeely, Legal Manager, Gateshead Council, providing legal support to the meeting.
Phil?
Okay, good morning. My name is Phil McCarthy. I work in the Planning Department and I'll be presenting the items to committee this morning.
And Emma?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Emma Lucas. I'm a Development Manager here at the Council.
Okay, thank you. Thing off. We do have speakers today, so I'll explain the speaking process. We'll consider the applications with speakers first. For those who have registered to speak, I'll call you in turn after the officer has given their presentation and answered any questions from the members of the committee. You'll each be able to speak for 4 minutes. Members of the committee may want to ask you questions after you have spoken. Can I ask you to mute your microphone unless I have called you to speak and after you've spoken? If you speak out of turn, we can mute your microphone or remove you from the meeting. Okay. First agenda item is apologies for absence. They'll have been forwarded to the admin officer and recorded. The minutes of the last meeting, do we approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Approve them, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest, I have none. If anybody feels that they have an interest as we progress, please speak up and we'll take legal advice on how to proceed from the legal officer, Brendan. Agenda items are for information only. The reports pack include 4 reports for your information on appeals and planning obligations. Okay. So we're now moving on to the the main agenda, the applications. And the first agenda item is land rear of the cottage, Gateshead Road, Sunnyside. Phil?
Okay, there we are, Chair. You should be able to see the slide on there now, which is slide number 1. Okay, so as the Chair said, this is land to the rear of the cottage, Gateshead Road, Sunnyside. The application proposes the demolition of the college, and that will be followed by the construction of 17 houses, along with associated landscaping, amenity space, SUDs, access, as well as some works to a public right-of-way. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, Section 106, and also there is the outstanding publicity period that would need to expire. The slide there now shows the site outlined clearly. The application site is located within the Street Gate area and is known in the local plan as Sunnyside North East. The site covers an area of approximately 0.8 hectares. You can see from the image there, it's generally made up of grassland, although there is some woodland and there is also an orchard. The property that you can see is the cottage, which is to the Gateshead Road frontage, which would be demolished as part of the scheme. This site is allocated for housing in the council's core strategy. Again, just staying on that image, you can see there are residential properties to the east and also to the west. There is the public highway to the south, and then beyond that, on the opposite side of the road, is Sorella Pub Restaurant. Again, you can see just on the opposite side of Gateshead Road. The fields to the north are in agricultural use, and they are within the green belt. Got a couple of photographs just to flick through of the site as it is now. That first photograph, which is slide number 3, shows the position of the access road. Now the site is to the left of that image, so obviously it's a new access proposed. This is from a similar location, but looking the opposite way. So this time the application site is on your right-hand side. This is a view from Gateshead Road towards the cottage. Now the cottage is the house that will be demolished as part of the scheme. And then some images from within the site itself. So this is a view towards Pontycherry Cottage, which actually fronts onto Gateshead Road. I do have a location plan in the next couple of slides so you can see exactly where Pontycherry Cottage is. And again, this is a view from the site towards other residential properties that sort of front onto Gateshead Road, in particular the cottage, Southley, High Winds. So this is the proposed layout. As I said earlier, the application proposes 17 houses. And just to pick out some of the features that we looked at on the photographs, you can see the property to the top right is Pontycherry Cottage. Southley is to the bottom left of that image. And then the big building opposite, you can see is labelled up as Sorella. Now, access into the site will be from a single point. Again, you can see that which comes off the 692 Gateshead Road. That's a new vehicular access. To the west of the site, you can see it marked up is a connection into the existing public rights-of-way network. An area of open space is to be provided within the development site. You can see that towards the centre, and the houses would essentially sort of sit around that area of open space. The trees, which are to the north, west and east, are all to be retained. Now, as I said, 17 houses are proposed. You can see from this layout there are a mix of house types and sizes. Of those 17, 13 would be detached and 4 would be semi-detached. 8 would have 5 bedrooms, 4 would have 4 bedrooms, and 5 would have 3 bedrooms. 1 bungalow is proposed, but the majority, so the 16, of the balance would be houses. The report before you covers the planning considerations in detail, in particular looking at the principle of development, and then details such as design, amenity, transport and ecology and drainage, amongst other things. But I will just pick out some of those sort of key planning considerations for the purpose of this presentation. First of all, just looking at the principle of development on this site. So going back a little while, policy CS1 of the core strategy set out a plan for sustainable growth. Given the increase in population as well as economic growth, there was a need to plan for 30,000 houses across the planned period. Planning for that growth led to the allocation of several sites for housing, and this is one of those such sites. This allocation is for approximately 48 homes. You will note from the report, and as highlighted on this screen, the two images that you can see currently, that the application does not cover the entire allocation of the plan. And although a master plan has been submitted that shows how the developments could fit in with the wider area, it is only considered binding as far as it relates to the application site. That said, the master plan does help in that it indicates that the development of this part of the site does not prejudice the delivery of the balance. As set out in the report, the application does not satisfy the policy requirement to deliver the whole of the allocation and in accordance with a phased master plan and delivery plan. So that's set out in some detail. Ultimately, it is concluded that other planning considerations weigh in favour of the development to the point that your officers are satisfied that planning permission can be granted. Again, just to sort of pick up on the details of what you're looking at there on slide number 9. So the image to the top is the proposed layout, which shows the 17 houses. The image to the bottom is an extract from the council's core strategy plan, which shows the full extent of the allocation, which is for approximately 48 homes. Just as a point of reference, perhaps the most obvious one is if you look at the top image, you can see the Sorella restaurant, which is opposite the site, which is the large sort of irregular shaped building. You can just pick that up on the image to the bottom. So again, just for comparison, you see approximately what extent of the allocation is taken up with this application. The application proposes 17 properties. They would all be family housing in accordance with planning policy requirements. As I said earlier, that would be made up of 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties. All of the properties would provide adequate internal and external space, and the proposal is considered to be compliant with policy CS11. The design of the scheme has also ensured that appropriate separation distances would be maintained between the proposed houses and those that currently surround the site. I do have some images of the particular house types, which obviously allow you to look at the internal space standards, but also the design of the properties themselves. There are 6 different house types. I've just picked out 4 for the purposes of this presentation, but a variety of them. So you can see type 2 to the top, the elevations and floor plan. And then property type 3, which is the 1 bungalow that is proposed on this site. On the next slide, you can see property types 5 and 6. These are the larger properties on the site. So as well as the floor plans, which you can see, which are generous on all the property types, the design of the houses themselves have been designed to a high standard, and certainly something that your officers feel is appropriate in this area. Just to highlight that, there are some street scene elevations. There's a couple of these, so just to show different parts of the site. So the top one there is the site frontage, Then there's an internal street scene, the bottom one. Then a couple of other street scene elevations. Now, just in terms of the other considerations that are set out in your report, another key issue is the transport and highway impact. Now, as part of this application, the applicant has submitted a transport assessment, and there's also a travel plan included. The transport assessment estimates how traffic from the development and other developments will impact on the network, both now and in the future. That transport assessment also considers the potential chip generation from the whole allocation. So that's 48 units. So it goes further than this application itself. It looks at the whole allocation just to ensure that could still be accommodated. So as I said, it's sort of future-proof, if you like. Now, given the scale of the development and the level of impact on the network, it is considered that the appropriate approach is to require that the development includes measures that would enhance sustainable access to the site and the wider area. The real aim there is to promote non-motorised modes of transport. Those measures are set out in your papers, but again, they can be secured by planning condition. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, the application has been supported by an up-to-date ecological survey, which includes a biodiversity net gain loss calculator. The applicant has sought to avoid adverse impacts on biodiversity and provide on-site mitigation and compensation where unavoidable. However, after taking those measures, there would still be a residual loss of biodiversity, and to address those, an off-site ecological compensatory measures are required, and that will be secured through a Section 106 agreement. The report goes on to consider other matters, including issues around land contamination, drainage, trees, landscape impact, and those matters are considered in detail in your papers. The application is considered to be acceptable in each of those aspects, or can be made so through the imposition of planning conditions. We have received a number of representations on this planning application. The ones that we'd received at the time of writing are set out on screen. So that's a total of 23 letters of objection and a letter of support. Those letters are summarised on your screen. Again, this is an extract from the paper, so there isn't anything that members won't already have seen. Again, just to add, we have had a further letter of objection, which is included in your update, which didn't actually raise anything new. So it's those matters which are already covered in that summary. Where those letters of representation have been received in proximity to the site, that's shown on screen there now. So you can see the red triangles are where we've had letters of objection. The bright blue dots are where properties have been consulted, but no comments have been received. Just to conclude, the application site is allocated in the council's core strategy, and therefore residential development on the site is considered to be acceptable in principle. The proposal would help deliver a number of benefits, including the provision of family housing in Gateshead. It would also bring about other economic benefits. Now, after considering the relevant planning policies and other material planning considerations, it is recommended that permission be granted for the development in accordance with the terms set out in your agenda papers. Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just pull that presentation down.
Thank you, Phil. Does anyone have any questions of Phil?
Chair, it's Keith Wood.
Yeah.
Just a question. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just want to clarify, Phil, the public right of way to the west of the application, which in the master, if it was a big master plan, would obviously go through the whole development. I just want to, does the people who are living on that this proposed new development, does the public right of way run through the development so the residents, potential residents, would actually have access from within the development?
They would do. I can. I might pull up the layout if that would help. But yes, certainly residents would have access to it. And actually, the surface would be upgraded, so it would be an upgraded sort of facility that residents would have access to.
Thanks very much. I just want to clarify that it's
Okay, Keith.
fenced off at all.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to the speakers. Mr. Gardner. Hello, Mr. Gardner, are you there?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yep, you've got 4 minutes,
Brilliant.
Mr. Gardner. Okay.
Right, that's great. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Appreciate that, Mr. Goldsworthy.
Coming off.
Sorry?
Oh, yeah,
Right,
it's a bit of me. I said, okay. You've got 4
right.
minutes.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Right, the committee has been asked to grant permission for the demolition of a stone-built single-storey cottage and the construction of 17 houses, 16 of which are large, imposing dwellings with accommodation and windows over 3 floors. The cottage is mentioned in the planning officer's report as, and I quote, "While the cottage is considered to be an attractive building in its own right, it is the view of the officers that its demolition would not have an unacceptable impact on either the site or the wider area." The cottage dates back to the 1800s and possibly the 1700s. The National Planning Policy Framework specifically highlights the need to conserve heritage. Mr. Gannon highlights in the Making Spaces for Growing Places document 2018 the need to identify valuable heritage assets, record them and preserve them, and defines a heritage asset as, amongst other things, being listed on the Tyne and Wear Historic Environment Record. This document also states development proposals which lead to the heritage asset to be put at risk will not be supported. As one of the few remaining original buildings in the area, this cottage is listed on the record and is a heritage asset, reference HR 16356. Local policy is to preserve heritage assets, as per Mr. Gannon. National planning guidance states that if a building or site is on a local list, means that its conservation as a heritage asset is an objective of the policy framework and a material consideration when determining the outcome of a planning application. There's a raft of policies and procedures in place to deal with such assets, as well as the requirement to provide a clear, audible record for accountability. The core strategy in Urban Gateshead Newcastle Plan and the Sunnyside Development Plan, which has been mentioned in several places, needs to maintain the character of the area and ensures the cottages being outside the area highlighted for housing and development for this above reason, if you refer to slide 9 that you've previously seen. The plan before the committee would see that along the frontage of the site, the removal of Low Stone Cottage and replace it with a total of 6 houses in an elevated position overlooking the road and covering well over 50% of the frontage, creating a brick wall of accommodation over 3 floors and completely changing the aspect and character of the area. All other development in the area, Burden Park, the Birches, Causey Heights, have either presented gables to the road or set the houses back from the road and have been constructed in a sympathetic way. The proposed houses do not fit in with the vernacular of the area and they're the same as ones built in various random sites across the north of England. The development proposes a traffic refuge on the A692 outside Sorellas. Not only will it obstruct and cause problems to 2 driveways, but this is the most dangerous part of a dangerous road, and asking people to cross there will lead to serious injury. There is a current damage to the wall of the cottage which was caused a few weeks ago by a car crash, which would also have taken out the refuge were it there. This is a common occurrence. If the panel were to visit the site,
you're coming to the last minute.
I understand if the panel were to visit the site, the cottage demolished and replaced by the proposed frontage, and witness the cars driving around the corner over the position of the refuge, they would have a full appreciation of these facts. The residents are battered by the amount of development in the area, but most have a settled acceptance of the inevitability and understand the need to provide housing for the future. But in this case, they have been misled and are shocked and stunned at the potential destruction of the cottage, the loss of the green spaces and the replacement by a brutal, large, imposing wall of brick. In conclusion, I would respectfully caution the committee that there are several other significant issues with this application which have not been addressed in the planning process. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's spot on time. Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions of the speaker? No? Okay, then, thank you. We'll move on to the next speaker. Ian Cransfield.
Cansfield.
Yeah. Are you there? Yeah.
I am, yes. Good morning.
Good morning. You've got 4 minutes to say, okay?
Okay, thank you. Dear Chair.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Dear Chair, members of Planning Committee, members of the public, many thanks for the opportunity to address Planning and Development Committee today. My name is Ian Cansfield, Planning Director at Cundall, acting on behalf of the applicant, Capex Construction, who are a well-established, regionally based house builder who has developed a number of successful residential projects around Tyneside. This detailed application is for 17 homes and associated access and amenity space. The site will accommodate a range of property types, including 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties. The scheme is designed to a very high standard, incorporating a traditional palette of materials and modern internal layouts. The layout of the site has been designed to maximise green space and utilise the existing tree planting to improve public amenity within the area. The site is allocated for housing as part of a wider site within the adopted development plan. Ideally, we would have brought forward an application for the entire allocated site, but this was not possible due to agreements not being reached with all landowners. Nevertheless, Capex are seeking to agree that and bring forward proposals for the remaining part of the site in the near future. The site also forms part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply and is categorised as being suitable for development for up to 48 homes in Mishlar. The proposals for housing in a sustainable location with a high demand for housing. The site is within walking distance to local services and is supported. It's also located adjacent to a bus stop, which offers frequent bus services to nearby local areas and Gateshead and Newcastle. It's well located with good access to employment opportunities and schools. The design of the scheme has evolved quite substantially and reduced in scale following the original submission in order to address site constraints and to ensure that the scheme is of the highest quality and can be delivered comfortably across the site. The design team have worked to resolve all technical issues that were presented in the original proposals and throughout the determination period. In summary, the proposals demonstrate the site represents a suitable residential development for housing, as evidenced through the site's policy status. The site will deliver much needed family homes in Gateshead and contribute towards employment and reduction of flood risk within the area due to the SUD's proposals. The proposals have carefully considered all technical issues and present a high quality scheme taking advantage of the site's existing opportunities. We therefore would respectfully request that the committee agree the recommendation in the officer's report and grant permission for the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any questions of the speaker? No? Okay, thank you for your time. Any further questions of Phil, the officer? Anybody? Any member?
Yeah, Bob, it's Councillor John McClure here.
Okay, John.
It was really, if we could just have some clarification around the heritage status of the building, does it, well, just the background to it, what's involved?
That's to Phil, yeah?
Yes, please, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of the opinion of your officers, that's set out in para 5.45. It does make it clear that the cottage is an attractive building, but ultimately it's considered that its demolition would not be unacceptable. Mm-hmm. In planning policy terms, the NPPF, as the speaker does set out sort of tests around impact on historic environment, and one of the terms is a heritage asset. So a heritage asset can include a building. I'll just to quote the NPPF. A heritage asset includes a building, a monument, site, place, area of landscape identified as having a degree of significance, merit and consideration in planning decisions because of its historic interest. It includes designated heritage assets and assets identified by the local planning authority, including local listings. Now, this building is not statutory designated, so it doesn't have a listing like it's not grade 1 or 2 listed that committee might be familiar with. It's not within a conservation area, nor is it on the council's list of local listings. That said, the committee does still have to be mindful that if it does consider it to be a heritage asset, then that would have to be considered as part of its decision making.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil. Councillor, yeah, Vicky, yeah. Vicky Anderson.
Hi there, and thank you. So it's just leading on from John's point. It was mentioned by one of the speakers that this cottage was not in the area that was deemed for housing, and it's just some clarification on that. Obviously, it is we're looking at demolishing an already a useful and pleasant building for the building of others. So it's just some clarification on that.
Yeah, what I might do, Councillor, if I pull up the one of the earlier slides to show the extent of the allocation. Bear with me a second. So that is the cottage, which is the property being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the image at the bottom is the extent of the allocation, which does not include the cottage. The application site, which is at the top, does include the cottage. Now, the cottage is on the site frontage. So if you look at the proposed access into the site, it's sort of to the left, if you like. So it's that area which is included in this site, but is not included as part of the allocation. Okay, does that clarify the point, Councillor?
Yeah, I must have missed that on the diagrams before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Does that help, Vicky? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, Chair, I've got my hand up there.
Okay, sorry, Keith.
It's all right. I've got a couple of questions to Phil. So in terms of the ownership of the bungalow, if the owner wanted to actually just demolish their own bungalow, are they allowed to do so? I just want to clarify that first of all.
There would be an application process. So there would have to be an application to the council for our determination. So there would have to be a process to go through. Quite, yeah.
So would that process come to the planning committee eventually? Is it a similar process in terms of?
It isn't. It's dealt with as a notification, so it's more of a sort of streamlined process. There are only certain things that the council can consider in those sorts of applications. I would have to check the delegation scheme to be absolutely honest, Councillor, but I think something like that is very unlikely to come to planning committee. I have a recollection that those applications are delegated to officers, but that's something I would need to check. But in any event, there would be a decision-making process, whatever ultimately the decision-maker would be, as I'm not 100% on.
Okay, I've got two more questions, Chair.
Yeah, go on, Keith.
Yeah, still to Phil. So in essence, although the application says that this is developed for 17 dwellings, in fact it's for 16, isn't it? Because we're actually losing a development, we're losing one house and replacing them with obviously 17, but in a sense there's an increase of 16, isn't there?
Well,
absolutely right. Yeah, the application is for 17 new houses, but yeah, in terms of net increase, yeah, it's 16. I just wanted to just come back to the earlier point. I've just been looking at the regulations. The actual the demolition of the property is established as a point of principle. When the council looks at those sort of applications, we're only able to look at the method of demolition and also the restoration of the site. So the actual principle of the development isn't in question, and that sort of application, it is very much sort of technical consideration about demolition and restoration.
Okay, so that sort of clarifies something in my mind that the applicant could have come forward. I'm going to demolish this particular property within, you know, a suitable method, landscape it, and just leave it at that. So, okay. The other question was something that the objector raised, which I have sympathy with in terms of the actual street appearance of Streetgate itself in terms of this development. So currently, there's a stone wall, a sandstone wall, forms the sort of the boundary of the particular site that we've got at the moment. Can I just clarify, what is that stone wall going to be replaced by a brick wall by the developer?
If you bear with me a second, Councillor, I'll just check the plan on that particular point. Okay. No, just looking at the plan, the majority of the certainly where possible that the boundary wall would be retained. It's just the area around the access that would be demolished. So certainly as a feature it would be retained where possible, but obviously you'd have to have a sort of a hole sort of punched in it for the access point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chair. Just want to clarify. So the stone wall will be retained, and I would presume at the entrance, the developer would obviously blend in with the stone wall, I presume.
Yeah.
So it's more of a suitable, natural appearance.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the final details would have to be secured by condition, and obviously there would have to be a balance there between the design, but also the highway requirements in terms of visibility, splay, etc. But certainly the intention would be to retain where at all possible, and if it isn't possible to retain and it's necessary to replace, that should be in a sympathetic way, and that's exactly what the condition would seek to do.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Okay, Michael Hood, Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I haven't actually got a question, but I'd like to move the officer recommendation to grant.
Okay, it's been moved. Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'd be happy to second.
Happy, okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yeah.
Chair, could I just, in terms of, I'm okay with what's being proposed there, but in terms of the condition for the boundary wall, I would maybe just take that firmed up that this is an area which you could consider sort of a rural area of Gateshead in terms of the approach to Sunnyside. I just want to make sure that we have that stone wall retained or replaced to an existing natural stone wall as opposed to a brick. We can maybe cement that condition in, please.
Okay, could you do it
with cement?
Is that possible, Phil? Phil?
Yeah, if you bear, I was just wanted to compare that against the access drawing. If you just bear with me a second, Chair.
I'll just put a condition in.
Yeah, so I was just just checking the layout, Chair. Absolutely, there would be provision, and if members deemed it appropriate, that could be considered through planning condition. There is a condition already on boundary treatments, which is condition number 18, So it might be that members just wanted to add to 18 a particular reference to the retention and or replacement of the front boundary where retention isn't possible.
Okay, Michael, you moved the recommendation. Are you happy to do that, or?
I'm happy to amend that, yes.
Okay then, we need to go to the vote. So, all those in favour of the officer recommendation, say grant or refuse, either grant or refuse the application. Okay, Melvin.
Yeah. Councillor Burnett, please. Councillor Burnett there.
Just move on now.
Councillor Dickey. Yeah, Councillor Dickey.
Grant.
Councillor Ferdinand.
Grant.
Councillor Geddes.
Grant.
Councillor Hall.
Grant.
Councillor Curtin.
Grant.
Councillor Lee.
Grant.
Councillor McCartney.
Grant.
Councillor McMaster.
Grant.
Councillor Oxbury.
Grant.
Councillor Turnbull.
Grant.
Councillor Woff. Councillor Wheeler. Councillor
Grant.
Wood. Thank you.
Grant.
Councillor Anderson.
Grant.
Councillor Craig.
Grant.
Councillor McClure.
Grant.
Councillor Ord.
Grant.
Councillor Patterson.
Grant.
Just go back.
Chair, I don't think you said, I didn't manage to get in there, Councillor Wood.
Oh yes, I got you, Councillor Wood.
I've managed to unmute now. It's Councillor Burnett. Grant.
Thank you. And Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yes, and I'm Grant. Okay. That's unanimous. The application is granted. The officer recommendation is granted. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Phil, we'll move on to the next application.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll just pull the PowerPoint up, Chair.
Balmoor Terrace, Brighton.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so you should see slide number 1 on screen now. So as the chair said, this is an application 11 Balmoor Terrace in Wrighton. The application proposes a change of use from a coffee shop, retail, storage and workshop to a coffee shop with 3 treatment rooms, a gym and also a physio facility. The application is retrospective, and again you'll note that from the description. The application is recommended for permission to be granted. Just before I go into the slides and presentation proper, just to bring your attention to an update report that has been circulated in advance of this meeting. What that update does is brings to your attention a representation from Councillor Chris Buckley, and the points of support are set out in your papers. There is also a proposal to amend the planning condition that deals with the noise mitigation scheme. And again, the proposed words are set out in your update papers. So just moving on. The slide on screen there now shows the application site outlined in red. You can see it's the end unit on Balmoor Terrace, Main Road in Wrighton. In a similar position, but this time from an aerial photograph, again with the property outlined in red. Again, just to note, it's an end of terrace property and it's the ground floor of the unit only. I then have a couple of photographs just to show the unit as it is. As I said, the application is retrospective, and therefore this is what it looks like and will continue to. So it's the end unit, and its signs reads Wrighton Health Hub. You can see in the window, I don't know if you can zoom in, but there's reference there to the therapy rooms, the gym, and also the coffee shop. Again, this is an image of the front and then down the side of the unit as well. Then continuing down that side is the next photograph, this time looking back towards the main road. And then a view of the back itself. So the application site is to the right as you look at it there. There are properties to the left-hand side, and they're in residential properties, which you can't quite see, but over the top of that high wall. And this is a proposed internal layout. Now you can see the applicant's annotation. Well, they are there, but they aren't particularly clear. So what I've done, I've picked out some of the key uses. So this is looking at it sort of front to back. So the front of the unit is at the bottom of that image. That's where the coffee shop's proposed, along with one of the treatment rooms. And then the gym and physio facilities are towards the back ends of the building. We have received representations, both in support and objecting to this application, and they're set out on screen. Again, this is an extract from your paper, so there isn't anything new. Again, obviously, just to highlight, the representation from Councillor Buckley wouldn't be included on this slide because that was included on your update papers. We have also received one neutral letter, and again, that's summarised towards the bottom of that slide. And where in the vicinity, the objectors are shown on screen, and also the letter of support. Supporters are green triangles. Now, the report before you considers the planning merits of the case in some detail. It then goes on to conclude that the development is acceptable in principle in this location. It is also considered to be acceptable in terms of its visual and highway impact, and also subject to condition. It is considered that it is also acceptable from an amenity perspective, and having regard to those conditions, it is recommended that planning permission be granted for the application, which will be retrospective, the terms of which are set out in your papers, as well as the update report. Thank you, Chair. I'll just take that presentation down.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Anybody have any questions of Phil?
Chair, I've got one.
Yeah.
Councillor Keith Ward. Is there any particular reason why this is a retrospective planning application?
I don't know. I think that would have to be something we'd ask at the of the developer. But the use has been in operation since early middle of 2019. We are taken to understand. It was brought to our attention through a complaint. So I can't speak for the developer. So I don't know why whether it was sort of deliberately set out or whether it was in a naive position. But in any event, there is provision to determine applications on a retrospective basis, and it should just be considered as any other application, basically.
Okay, Chair. Thank you.
Dot, did you raise a hand? Dot Burnett? Oh.
No.
Okay. Any further questions? Anybody move it? Anybody would like to move something?
Chair, I'd like to move the officer recommendation to grant.
Is that seconded?
Happy to second.
Yeah, okay, that's seconded. Okay then. So we're voting either grant or refuse on the officer recommendation. Are you ready, Melvin?
Okay, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett.
Grant.
Councillor Dickey,
Grant.
Councillor Ferdinand,
Grant.
Councillor Geddes,
Grant.
Councillor Hall,
Grant.
Councillor Curtin,
Grant.
Councillor Lee,
Grant.
Councillor McCartney,
Grant.
Councillor McMaster,
Grant.
Councillor Oxbury,
Grant.
Councillor Turnbull,
Grant.
Councillor Waff,
Grant.
Councillor Wheeler,
Grant.
Councillor Wood,
Grant.
Councillor Anderson,
Grant.
Councillor Craig,
Grant.
Councillor Ord,
Grant.
and Councillor Patterson, please.
Grant.
And over to you, Chair.
Grant, okay. Thank you.
Can I just
The other-
put my...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
I do
Chair.
down a second and to grant.
Okay then, right, yeah. Okay, thank you.
We've got you, John. Okay.
Yeah, okay, no
Thank you.
problem.
The application's granted. Okay, thank you. The application's granted. Can we move on to the next application, Phil? Field to the north of Northview Farm. Hello, Phil? Yeah. Members, turn their mics off when they're not using them, please. Okay, when they're not speaking. What do I say? What do I say? Phil, you're on mute.
Okay, yeah, I've got you now, Chair, yeah. Okay, yeah, so you can see the site in context. So the settlement of Greenside is highlighted to the east of that image. The site itself has got the green star on it to the left side, and you can see the settlement of Colburns is just on image to the bottom of that slide. Really, just to provide some context. This application site is really to the far west of the borough. Okay, you should be on slide number 3, which shows the extent of the application site outlined in red. The site has been used for agricultural purposes and is currently sown to grass, as you can see from the aerial. It is enclosed by hedges on all sides, and there is a vehicular access in the west corner, which you probably can't see from that aerial, but I'll show that on the photographs to follow. This is a plan that shows the site as it is now. The site itself doesn't have any significant feature other than the hedgerow that run around its boundaries. And this is the proposed plan. And there is also a plan which shows the position of the building on that image, which you can see is towards the left-hand corner. And the proposed building itself, which would provide stabling and also a hay store. The building would measure 15 metres by 3.8 metres, and at its highest point, it would be approximately 2.7 metres high. It would have timber walls and also a steel sheet roof. We have received one letter. Oh, sorry, jumping ahead. There's a couple of photographs of the site as it is. So this is a view towards the site access. And then looking along the field boundary. So this is approximately where the building would be located. Locating the building adjacent to the existing hedgerow is sort of considered to be good practice. It does minimise the impact on the openness by keeping all the sort of development and enclosure together. And there's a view of the site itself. See, it's rather featureless other than the boundary hedges. We have received one letter of representation, and that's just as summarised in your papers. So again, I don't have anything to add to that slide. The report before you does set out the main planning considerations, and in this instance, the main planning issue is considered to be the location of the property within the Greenbelt. There are two elements to this scheme, one being the change of use of the land from agriculture to the keeping of horses, and the second, albeit linked part, is for the erection of the building. A Greenbelt policy allows for both of those things, and that is set out in detail within your report. So certainly your officers are satisfied that in Greenbelt terms the application is acceptable. It then goes on to consider all other aspects like you would expect, so the design and also the access, etc. And it concludes that the application is acceptable or can be made so in those respects. Just to finish, it is recommended that planning permission be granted, subject to the conditions set out in your application papers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Does anyone have any questions of Phil?
Yes, Bob, it's
Yeah, I
Councillor
can see you,
McClure.
John. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It was really about the boundary treatment. You know, at the minute it's sown to grass, so nothing's going to escape. But what's going to happen when they put alpacas and horses in there? I mean, are they going to have to fence it all off, or they're going, you know, or is the hedging that's there secure enough? Do we know?
There isn't any intention within the application to fence it off. I mean, ultimately, if that was to be a subsequent action, that would have to either be the subject of a planning application or it could be dealt with as permitted development. But it certainly isn't part of this application to fence off the site. The intention is to retain the hedgerows and trees in situ.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Everybody else? Okay. Somebody move something, please.
I'll be happy to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, John. Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Dot. It's been moved and seconded that the application be granted. All those in favour would grant or against refuse. Okay. Alvin?
Okay, Councillor Hood. Councillor Hood.
Grant.
Councillor Dickey.
Grant.
Councillor Ferdinand.
Grant.
Councillor Geddes.
Grant.
Councillor Hall.
Grant.
Councillor Curtin.
Grant.
Councillor Lee.
Grant.
Councillor McCartney.
Grant.
Councillor McMahon. Councillor McMaster.
Sorry, Melvin. Grant.
Thank you. Councillor Oxbury.
Grant.
Councillor Turnbull.
Grant.
Councillor Waugh.
Grant.
Councillor Wheeler.
Grant.
Councillor Wood.
Grant.
Councillor Anderson.
Grant.
Councillor Craig.
Grant.
Councillor Ord.
Grant.
And Councillor Patterson.
Grant.
And then over to you, Chair.
Yeah, and that grant, okay. The application's been granted. Thank you, members. Phil, can we move on to the Hawkswood application now? Application number 4.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so you should be able to see slide number 1 now. So the application site is Baltic Business Quarter, multi-storey car park, Hawks Road, Gateshead. The application proposes the erection of a 10-storey multi-storey car park, including electricity substation and vehicular access point, as well as associated works, including landscaping. The application is recommended for approval. You can see on slide number 2, which is the full extent of the application site, which measures 0.9 hectares. There's currently mostly green open space. Just for some context, you can see Hawks Road, which is labelled to the north of that image, and it's the college, which is labelled up to the bottom left, is Gateshead College. You can we can make out the shape of the flats at the Baltic towards the top left of that image as well. This next slide is an extract from the council's core strategy plan. What this does is it highlights the major regeneration area around the quays within the plan. That allocation is for a diverse mix of cultural, commercial and leisure-led uses. That very large strategic area is broken down into sub-areas, and one of those is called the Baltic Business Quarter. Now, the Baltic Business Quarter is highlighted as number 5 on that image. So that entire part of the allocation is the Baltic Business Quarter. This development would sit within that quarter. Now, as part of that allocation within the core strategy, it is recognised that road and parking infrastructure may be required to assist with the delivery of the business quarter. The delivery of this car park would serve the wider development of the area as set out in the core strategy. Now, an example of that is how members may recall at last planning committee there was an application for a road called the North-South Road, which I'll show on the next slide. But this car park is adjacent to that road and will be accessed from it. The planning policy position is set out in detail within the report. However, just to summarise, it is concluded that there is policy support for this development, and the development would accord with the aims and objectives of both national and local planning policy. In terms of the details of this particular scheme, you can see the building is shown there now towards the central part of the application site. So it's the rectangular shape. You can see the areas of green space around it. The road that is labelled as North-South Road to the right of that image is the road that planning committee considered at the last meeting 3 weeks ago. These are some proposed elevations of the building. It is considered that the design approach has been adopted is sympathetic to the area, and it also accords with the design principles that are now established at the quays and Baltic Business Quarter. Also have some generated images on this slide, just to show how the building would look. So the images on the left are obviously daytime images, and then also how it would look at night time, which is the images to the right. Just some photographs of the site as it is now. So this is a view from Hawks Road looking towards the application site. When I talked about the new road, that would follow the line of the road that you can see there, which is to the left, which is currently shut off, but that will be opened. So that's the road that you considered at the last meeting. Hawks Road is the road to the right. And this is a similar view from Hawks Road. And then again, just looking towards the application site. This is the existing road that would be replaced. The access into the car park would be to the right as you look at that. We have received 2 letters of representation, and they're summarised on screen. But as before, this is just an extract from your paper, so there isn't anything that you would have already have seen before. Members will note that the application has been treated as EIA development, and therefore an environmental statement was submitted with the application. Your officers are satisfied that sufficient environmental information has been submitted to allow a decision to be reached. Just to summarise, the proposal would help with the development of the area and accords with national and local planning policies. The main planning considerations are set out in your papers, and subject to conditions, the application is considered to be acceptable in each respect. It is therefore recommended that planning permission be granted for the development, subject to the conditions set out. Thank you, Chair. I'll just take that presentation down.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Does anyone have any questions for Phil? No, can't see any hands. No. Okay. Somebody like to move something?
I'd like to move the officer recommendation to grant.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Yeah, who was that?
Catherine, Councillor
Okay.
Burnham.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that the application be granted. The usual, all those in favour say grant. If you're against, refuse. Okay. So, Melvin, are you ready? You're on mute. Melvin, you're on mute.
Thank you. Councillor
Good
Burnett,
man.
please.
Right, grant.
Thank you. Councillor Dickey.
Grant.
Councillor Geddes.
Grant.
Councillor Hall.
Grant.
Councillor Curtin.
Grant.
Councillor Lee.
Grant.
Councillor McCartney.
Grant.
Councillor McMaster.
Grant.
Councillor Oxbury.
Grant.
Councillor Turnbull.
Grant.
Councillor Waff.
Grant.
Councillor Wheeler.
Grant.
Councillor Wood.
Grant.
Councillor Anderson.
Grant.
Councillor Craig.
Grant.
Councillor McClure.
Grant.
Councillor Ord.
Grant.
And Councillor Patterson.
Grant.
And finally, Chair, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, grant, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So the application's been granted. Can I just, that concludes the applications, but we do have 3 further extra items for information. And I think Emma's going to do them. The first ones, well, Emma will talk through it. Are you okay with that, Emma?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if you can go to agenda item 10 in your additional information papers. First additional item is a decision that's been made under the new emergency legislation, which allows for development sites to apply to extend their operational hours on site. You'll recall that the Business and Planning Act allowed developers to extend their sites as a result of ongoing restrictions placed on development sites as a result of social distancing guidelines. So we've had another application, and the details are in Appendix 2 for extension of hours at Follingsby Park. And this decision, we have 10 working days to make a decision, otherwise it automatically gets planning permission. So therefore officers have used emergency powers under the general delegation to managers of the Constitution to make a decision to grant the extension for this application. Thank you, Chair. Do you want me just to move on to the next one?
Yeah, just carry on. Yeah.
Okay, agenda item 11. This is for information about the consultation that the Council has been asked to contribute to MHCLG have sent out a consultation on the planning white paper, which sets out quite radical reforms to the planning system in England, and it's seeking the views of interested parties to those changes. This has been circulated previously, and I think it's been through a decision-making process. The council it does intend to make its views and report its views to this consultation process. This report is really just for your information, to give you an idea of the kind of things that are being proposed and the way that they might impact on the way that we deal with planning applications as a planning committee and as a council. I won't go through it in detail, I'm conscious of time, but it is quite a radical change that's being proposed. It will have an impact on plan making, on development management, the way we deal with planning applications, the way we deal with contributions towards planning applications as part of development, and other policies that we deal with. Essentially, what's being proposed is that every local authority has to divide its area up into 3 areas. It would be a growth area, allocated as a growth area, which would automatically grant outline consent for development in that area. The second classification could be a renewal area, which is existing built-up areas where there's some potential for development, but not as much as in a growth area. And then there's areas that would be protected, and these are areas such as conservation areas or wildlife protections where we wouldn't expect to see any development happening. The way the council generates its policies is proposed to be different, and that there would be a much more streamlined, smaller, more regularly updated local policy document for planning applications to be judged against. The way planning applications themselves, automatic planning permissions for certain types of development, certainly if they're allocated at a growth area level, and all you would submit to a planning department would be some technical details of the scheme, what it looks like, what materials are, that kind of thing at a much later stage in the process. Also, what's being proposed is a greater digitisation of the whole application and planning process, shorter, more standardised information, with the computer reading of information to monitor and process that application process in a much more digital way, which it'd be interesting to see how that works. The introduction of a fast track application process for beautiful schemes, for things that are well designed and have a good design to them. And then a proposal to change the planning obligations process, the Section 106 process and community infrastructure levy process into one combined tax that would be nationally set across the whole country on all development. And it's a question of if you are developing, you will have to pay an amount of tax as a result of the uplift in value that you get from your premises. So that is a very quick whistle-stop tour through the proposed consultation. It will have to go through. The legislation would have to go through government, the normal government processes, and debate and so on. So we don't know whether any of these will actually get through that whole process or what it would look like as that debate goes on. But it's what it is in initial stages of consultation at this stage. Thank you. And moving swiftly on to the final.
Can I just ask Emma a question on that?
Of course.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I know it's very much up in the air because of the consultation and everything like that. Is there any plans to give us any more presentations on it as it goes along? Because I mean, I'm still not quite sure what the effect it's going to have on planning. I'd like to have a little bit more information.
I think that's something I would like as well. I don't know. I mean, it's very, if you have had chance to read through quite a long document on the proposed changes, it is quite high level. There is not a lot of detail as to what it would actually mean on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, as more information comes out, and I'm sure there may be more consultations as part of this process, we would report that to you and be feeding into that process as it goes along. I'd imagine there'd be a role for MPs as well to feed into that process and what it means on a local context for different areas across the country. So absolutely, I can feed that through.
Right, thank you. Because to me, it's all blurred. I mean, I've tried to read it and I don't think there's very much detail in there at all. very much about, you know, what actually it's going to, what the impact's going to be on local authorities. I don't think there's a lot of information on that, really.
I think reading between the lines, it appears that the planning process, they're trying to bring it, the decision-making process to the allocation stage. So the development plan stage, where you allocate a land for a particular use, it has they're trying to give it a much stronger emphasis at that stage, so that there's more certainty for developers that if it's been allocated, you're going to get planning permission at the end of the day. And all you have to submit to the development management process, that at the planning stage, is the technical details of that scheme. You've got certainty that you're going to get your development on the site. It's just a question of talking about the detail. Yeah, the practicalities of that remain to be seen, and we look forward to more information coming through.
Right, thank you, Emma.
Okay, Chair. The final item is item 12. This is relating to community infrastructure levy funds that have been slowly coming in. Obviously, it takes a wee while for development to start getting to the stage where the levy is payable. It's payable on commencement of the development. So as soon as you start building works, then the first instalment is due to be paid to the council on community infrastructure levy. So although we've had it in place since 2017, the decisions that we've taken since 2017 have had to actually go on site before they start paying the levy to the council. Those have started to come in, certainly in the last year. And so as part of that, we I think in previous presentations I've given to committee, 80% is to be spent on infrastructure across the borough, and we've got a list of infrastructure that we're seeking to fund. 5% is admin, but 15% is called the neighbourhood portion, and that's to be spent in or near the development. It's a fund that could be drawn from to help for infrastructure and community projects in the local area to the site where the development is happening. So as part of this process, because we had some funds come in, we earlier this year, the Cabinet have approved a process for how this funding process would be allocated, and it was decided that the Community Foundation would seek bids from the local community, and then decisions on those bids would be made by ward members and the portfolio holder for communities and volunteering. So there'll be a decision-making process as to which bids were successful in getting that funding. I think the appendix actually shows that we have allocated 8 separate funds to community groups in the wards and the adjacent wards where the SIL has been paid from. A total grant funding of £35,704 has been distributed, and this is set out in the table. So this is for your information, that we are getting SIL funding in, and it is starting to benefit the local community. What I have to do every year as well is provide a report that shows the whole SIL infrastructure funding that we've gained this year and any spend. So I'll produce that report, but I thought in the meantime I'd produce this one just to show how it's being allocated out into the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Anybody have any questions to Emma? No, I'm okay with that. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much for your attendance, and everybody stay safe and see you all soon, hopefully. Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Bob. Bye.
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 Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.